welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I'm really excited to have our guest on today talking to us about creative and collective collaboration. Welcome, Stephen Minix.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm really excited. We're chatting in the green room about you having a coaching background and, the sports mentality. Which is absolutely riveting, and using some of these tools in the nonprofit sector is going to really make this a fabulous episode. So we're really talking about the silos that we all find ourselves in and protecting. How do we kind of break them down and look forward? So this will be a great conversation. We have a great conversation every day here on the Nonprofit Show because we have amazing partners. And they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. I want to give a quick shout out to Your Part-Time Controller. They were in my community, some of the directors last night here for a conference. We were able to go out to a lovely dinner. And it's always fun when you get to meet in, IRL in real life with people that you just have been having a relationship, online with. So again, I just wanted to say thank you to Your Part-Time Controller. Again, I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. But more importantly, I'm going to call you Coach Stephen Minix, Vice President Community at UpMetrics. Let's start with what is UpMetrics and what all do you do?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here, share some space. UpMetrics, we're a software as a service, an impact analytics org that helps nonprofits, impact producers, and impact funders, the impact investors and the foundations in the world use data to kind of work better together and tell stories and actually work towards impact. So whether it's reporting, whether it's understanding what you're trying to get done, we kind of help with our team and our technology make that possible and more streamlined.
So are you an organization, or do you have a product that manages the data, or is it more like synthesizing it?
Yeah, it's kind of both.
Okay.
Great follow-up question. Yeah, it's tech and team, right? So it's the technology to actually be able to make this stuff sticky, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. There's a story you're trying to tell with your data. But I think one of the things that goes wrong a lot of times is folks try to say, we want you to tell us this. It's validation. That's not learning. That's a weird thing. I think we're going to dive into that a little bit in some of the conversation we'll have today. But we use our technology and the team that we bring of thoughtful folks from the impact space, the impact investing space, the foundation space, the nonprofit space. And we kind of get in the sandbox and think about these solutions holistically. And that's what we've tried to build in our technology. And we supplement with our unbelievable team, which I get to be a part of and represent on a daily basis.
Interesting. Super cool. Well, this is the time for this conversation. The data and the metrics aspect of how we conduct our nonprofit businesses is at the forefront. And I was mentioning this to you in the green room, that for us, one of the top identified trends moving forward is this demand from funders, primarily demanding collaboration. And I use the example of the food bank system. Funders saying in my state several years ago, we're not going to write checks to 35 different food banks around the state. We want to write one big check to a food bank association that will manage the distribution of product. And so that drove an entire segment of the nonprofit sector to collaborate. And it was not easy. It was not easy. So I think this is something that we're seeing more and more. And I'm really excited to have you help us understand how we can navigate this. So the first thing go ahead. I interrupted.
I was just going to say on that one, one thing I would share is the key I heard there is demand. Mm-hmm. And demand dictates terms, right? Yeah. And so one of the things that I talk about, and I think we'll get into later, is power. And is demand a way that you foster collaboration? Not sure. I try to demand my kids eat their veggies. They don't always do it, right? So I think there's an art to getting folks to collaborate. And that's kind of what we're getting into now, right? I think, but I get what you're saying, and the sentiment is real. How do we work better together? And that, to me, is the holy grail.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So the first point, or the starting point, I guess I should say, is you advise us that there's no collaboration without communication. And how do you see this play out?
Sure. I mean, the communication to me involves clarity, right?
Okay.
You can't really communicate unless you're clear, unless what you're trying to communicate is chaos, right? Like if you've ever talked to somebody that isn't clear what they're trying to say, you're kind of like, I'm not sure they understand what they're trying to say. No, no ill or malice, but it's just that way. And so if you're trying to collaborate with somebody, that means doing together, right? So you can't do together unless we both know what we're trying to do. And so the communication piece, I think folks try to like run to like action before they get any kind of alignment. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm prepared to do. And then being able to articulate and listen to the partner. And so you must be clear on what you're aspiring to do and what you're willing to compromise to make happen in concert with the folks that you're doing it with, but also maintain that. So I think clarity gets you to the ability to communicate clearer. And then with that communication of clarity on who you are, what you're trying to do, you're more likely to find a dancing partner. It's tough to play social impact ping pong by yourself. You need a partner to hit it back.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up question, because
Sure.
do you think that people wanting to join a table, collaborate, do you think that they're necessarily coming to that table prepared with this foundational aspect? Like
No.
really understanding that?
Full
Yeah, see,
stop.
that's
No.
what I'm
Full
thinking.
stop. No. It's no. It's no. The answer is no. Otherwise, it would be happening, right? And so,
Yeah.
and it's not because people are mad or unwilling. Sometimes it's a skill thing. I talk about when I left education to come into tech, I didn't really understand what a P&L was, but you don't have profit and loss in public school education. It wasn't because I wasn't smart. I just didn't live in that lane, and I had to understand and transfer my knowledge to this space to understand it. So I think sometimes folks come in with the willingness to collaborate, even though they don't understand. That means you're going to have to give up something, right?
Yeah.
It's about consensus. It's not about 100% of what you want. I need something from you. You need something from me. I'm willing to work with you. You're willing to work with me. How do we work together? And I think that's the thing that folks struggle with sometimes is truly understanding what it takes to collaborate and what comes with that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the fun part to facilitate and support.
It's such an interesting comment, because when I hear you speak, it makes me realize that in our sector, in the nonprofit sector, and I would argue across our country, we've lost this art and we are losing this art. And if you and I are having to have the conversation
Absolutely.
that we're having, that right there kind of tells you that this isn't occurring as much as it should be. So
Absolutely.
what a frightening way to start this conversation. But I love this conversation, because it really does help us to understand how we can be successful. So we mentioned this briefly when we started chatting, that there is a power dynamic
Sure.
that we can
Sure.
identify. Sometimes we can't really explain it, but you advise us that it kills progress.
It can, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and also I would say to your point about frightening, look, you got to know the boogeyman before you can deal with it, right? And so if the issue is collaboration is friction, is difficult, then how do you work in that? Not talk about this over here to get to the real issue over here. Go at the issue. That's part of being clear on the communication. And then as it ties to power dynamics, look, let's be real. If I can cut the check, I can set the terms. That's just how it works, right? And it takes extra muscle for those that have the checkbook and have the power of the purse, the influence, the government, whatever way that you are going to use power in this conversation. But if you can set the terms, then it's on you to be more thoughtful about those terms you set and be more inclusive and welcoming of the dancing partners you're aspiring to work with. In this case, philanthropy and nonprofit, right? Oftentimes they need to come together to collaborate. Your capital, their lived experience and social entrepreneurship go together to realize something in society, hopefully, that you both agree on. But what happens is sometimes we say, how can we as a nonprofit bend and ply to fit into what you will fund? That
Yep.
by nature is odd. It's kind of lazy at too, and not lazy as in finger wagging, but lazy as in on both sides of the equation. You got capital and interest in caring about these institutions. I do this work. How can we best articulate our ability to be Batman and Robin together? And I think understanding that some simple things like meet with the nonprofit at their site when they're doing their work, bring them lunch, don't host lunch at your site. Simple human things, I think, can go a long way.
So let's talk about that aspect, because I really love that you brought this up about where we meet and how
Sure.
we come to the place of business. I think that's something that we completely overlook,
Sure.
which is so odd, but I love that you brought this up. So talk about the power of facilitating space and making those connections in the spirit of collaboration. What does that look
Sure.
like for you?
Yeah, I mean, given the work that we drive, and then oftentimes I'm lucky enough to be a part of the facilitation side of the rooms that we create are mixed company. As far as it might be impact investors and portcos, it might be foundations and nonprofits looking for capital, and so there's a need to be together, but there's also they move different and they move different, but they're in a team sport. So what I try to do is I talk about game film and I talk about how do you put people proximal to each other to accomplish what you're trying to do. So in examples for us, we drive something called collaborative cohorts. In those cohorts, we'll have funders and nonprofits working together based on the investment from the foundations to empower the nonprofits with resources and tech and team, et cetera. And that is our job. But the conversation, as a teacher, you think about differentiation, right? You got to differentiate the content for the audience, not dummy it down, not water it down, but you actually got to be thoughtful. This audience cares about what's going on and how it feels. A perfect example is transparency versus accountability. A funder will talk about accountability. A nonprofit producer or nonprofit leader will talk about transparency, right? Same thing, but feels a little different. Well, sometimes we got to deconstruct some of these things and talk about what are we trying to do, folks? We're trying to play a team sport. How are we going to work together? And I dust off my energy as an old PE teacher and professor to say, if we're trying to work together, we got to also understand what do we want to do? What are we willing to do? What are we situationed to do? What are we resourced to do? And how can we do that together? And this is us putting our cards on the table together. And those conversations need to be, you need to create space where that can happen. One of the recently in Detroit, we had a conversation about the elephant in the room, and folks are like, that's kind of loose. Feels like that's kind of loose. There's not enough guidance. Well, these are adults. They got feelings. They got passions. If you give them a prompt and you show them that you care about their response, they'll go with you. So the art is in the delivery and getting people to go with you, not throwing stuff at them and letting them catch it and practically apply it in their life. That's, to me, not facilitation. That is something different.
It's absolutely fascinating, because I've got to believe that the majority of the people watching us live, finding us on a podcast, visiting the archive, will not have thought about, and I'm going to call this pre-work, that
Sure.
they'll be more like what you just said. Okay, here's the deal. Let's go. Boom, boom, boom. Versus kind of building that foundation up so that it's going to be supportive of that next direction that we're taking to become collaborative. Is that
Sure.
fair to say?
It's definitely fair to say. Think about conferences. People go to conferences, they go to conference once a year and they get all spun up and excited. And I'm not being cynical. I'm just being candid, and I'm a pantomimer, so I use my hands. Like, the idea is you go to a conference, you get all excited, and then the conference ends. And then you may keep the energy together to ping them on LinkedIn, and you may see them again in your town, but there's really no connection in there. There's just the moment. Well, how do you take collaboration involves continuing the moment, right? We got to continue. Well, what does that continuing look like? If we've never thought about what we want long term, we're doomed to behave in quick moments only, and then get to the end and think that you can connect all these moments and have an experience. No, that builds Frankenstein type stuff. So the idea is pre-work. What do you want? What are you trying to do? How do you want to show up? What are you willing to continue doing? And most folks aren't willing to continue doing the work needed to collaborate, because we fall back into, when we get to our desk, you got your calendar up, you got your to-dos, you got your to-don'ts, and then you just kind of zoom through the day. without the pause to go back to, it takes a while to build a relationship.
Right.
It takes a snap to ruin it. And that is what people forget, is that how quickly you can unravel something that was done in a conference by not following up, not asking the question, not staying involved, not staying interested. And so I think that's something I really try to help folks understand is you got to do pre-work. You got to be interested. You got to show respect to the person that you're going to collaborate with by learning about them before you sit down with them. Try to be, the internet makes it easy. You can see, you can learn. And that's just good practice, I think.
It's really an interesting thing because I'm listening to you and I'm totally thinking about leadership and skilling leadership. I mean, these are things that are going to resonate with the team that you lead internally within your own organization, not just the collaborative nature of what you're trying to achieve or you're being forced into, as we mentioned. So I got to ask this question. How are you finding folks in the nonprofit sector understanding this work and doing it, like naturally doing it? Or is this like one of the big stumbling blocks before you even get out the gate?
Specific to the collaboration or specific to the, I mean, no, I think nonprofit practitioners by nature care about what they do, right? Like you care about what they do so much, but sometimes that creates blinders in this like survival mode of, I can only control this. I'll stay head down. I'll do this. But if you're head down, you can't learn, right? You're just surviving. And if what we're talking about is improvement and doing things better and learning and being effective, well, then it's the same thing that happens with teachers. Sometimes you're in the classroom so much that you never get out of the classroom to go see the new innovations and things that are happening that can supplement what you're teaching to your young people or your college students or whoever it may be. And so sometimes by being so in it, you can't see the opportunities to improve. And so you got to build time to go learn and be curious. That's hard. But a nonprofit oftentimes won't ask a funder for capacity money for them to go learn. They'll ask for stuff to survive. Right. And it's like, it's kind of this quagmire you create. And so are they prepared? Not yet at times. Are they capable? Completely. It's just a matter of how can we use the capital to create the space so that the folks can do what it is they want to do. And if we want innovation and learning and improvement, then you got to create space. The revolution must be funded. It can't you don't just have more time in the day. You need to carve it out. And I think, definitely, I never want to come off as they're not capable. No, and I know that's not what you were saying. They're capable. It's just a matter of, it's like my point about the P&L earlier. I didn't think P&L because I didn't know that. But you don't think I can look that up and learn it pretty quickly and apply that to what I'm doing today? I'm an adult. I can figure this out. I have capacity. So then how can we that are enabling organizations like nonprofits provide them with the tools, the training, the support as they see fit to drive their work through their lens of what ownership looks like. And that's the empowerment play that I think is super important. It's about them leading with what success is and then empowering them to get there and articulate that story the way they want, because that bass in their voice is powerful. And then that confidence comes with, it's a little bit more attractive to whoever you're talking to about what you're doing when you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you believe in it. And you can back it up with some qualitative and quantitative data so that you can go.
So it's really interesting because, this leads into the next part of our conversation and that difference between having a vibe and having a best practice.
Absolutely.
And I think what's so fascinating about this conversation is that when I was thinking about, when we booked you and when we decided what we were going to talk about and explored that, I was really thinking about a specific collaboration. And what I'm hearing from you is this is much more holistic. This isn't just about the collaboration within a certain part of your day-to-day business. It really should be an overall arching practice.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it earlier when you talked about this could be for leadership for internal teams, or it's the same objective, doing together, right? Collaboration is doing together, essentially, or working together or coming together to do. I don't know the exact definition, but I feel like it's one of those. And if it's really what you believe in, then it starts with how you present yourself. It starts with how you show up to a room, right? There's a phrase, I've heard it a bunch of different ways, but stand up to be seen, speak up
Yes.
to be heard, sit
Yeah.
down to be respected. Although I can dominate a microphone because I like to talk a little bit, doesn't mean I should. It means I should create space. It means I should provide the next person next to me opportunity to jump in. And so I think what I sometimes I'll say it's more than just sushi and vibes. Like when we
Mhm.
pull folks together, just because we put good food down and have a drink in our hand and are smiling about the work we're doing, doesn't mean it's not intentional. Doesn't mean it's not driven and focused. But I think sometimes people think you have to have either or.
Mhm.
No, I don't think in this world I have to be at a cubicle wearing a blazer with to do work. That may be a way to do it, but that's not the only way. And so when I say collaboration is not a vibe, it's a practice. Just because I'm smiling and because I rock with the work I do and I'm happy about it and I can get you to be smiling and excited about it, doesn't mean it's got to hurt. If you do a good classroom in high school, right, there's a lot of smiling going on, even if there's heavy, deep learning. And so how
Mhm.
do you do that? You believe in it. And what you do is create the space, but you can't have a friend of mine, Marcus Strother from Mentor California says, don't tell me we're on a retreat and take me to a golf course and have me do spreadsheet work. That's not a retreat, right? That's what he says. And so it's pretty funny. It's like, just because we're in a space together doesn't mean we're doing the thing.
Yeah.
Like it's the
Yeah.
intention behind all the stuff we're doing. And I think it's a pretty fun way to kind of summarize that.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's really interesting. And we've all been there. I mean, we've all been there. And especially when we're talking about, collaboration. We don't have a lot of time left. And I really want to dig into this last aspect.
Sure.
We're hearing so much and bandying about this, this notion of, trust and trust philanthropy and really stepping back from some of the, I don't want to use the word oversight, but maybe more restrictions with how we're funded and how we manage our nonprofits in relationship to funding, in relationship to just how we demonstrate what our impact is, right? So you have a really interesting phrase, impact grows at the speed of trust. Explain that to us.
Yeah. I mean, folks tend to fund who they know.
Yeah.
They know them, they've met them before. They trust them to do whatever it is they've showed them before they can do. To me, trust in the philanthropic world is about risk, period. Like if we called it risk mitigation, we would
Yeah.
approach it different, right? But to
Okay.
me, because it's capital, right? I'm believing in you. I'm cutting a check to you to do what you say you're going to do. Now, the strings that come with that are program related investments versus unrestricted capital, right? If you trust me, perhaps you give me the check to make the decisions that I know to make as the nonprofit leader, whether I need more paper clips or whether I need the innovation lab to stimulate learning for my youth development program. The trust says you give me the capital to make the decisions, not here's the capital, but you can only spend it on X, Y, and Z, and you got to report like this. That's just showing your level of trust. Is it bad? Is it good? It's not me to say. But I'd also push that trust based. And when people say trust based, it doesn't mean without data. Sometimes people think it means without any kind of like due diligence or those kind of things. No,
Right.
it's, in my opinion, it means you're letting the nonprofit tell you what success is, what they're aspiring to do, how they do it. And at UpMetrics, what we try to help a lot of organizations do is kind of dive into who do you serve with your work? What do you serve them with? What is the quality of that service? Is anybody better off? And how does it pertain to the community? It's a play on the results-based accountability model, but it's led by the nonprofit. And we help organizations say, this is what we do. This is why we do it, so that they understand and then have data that they curate and they build up in their work to put that justification together for why they say they are successful, pivoting, doing, etc. But it's for them. It's not for validation. If you really push me on this, and we had more time, I would talk about how I want to burn the annual report, because we don't wait till the end of the year to determine whether our kids can read. If they're in
Mhm.
school, there's progress reports, there's things along the way. The kids read to us. There's practice. There's fun things, right? So to me, impact grows at the speed of trust means If we are working in proximity to each other, we understand each other well, we understand what we're aspiring to do, you see what I'm trying to do in a way that resonates with you as a funder, I see as a nonprofit leader what you are prepared to do as a funder, then we can come together and have a thoughtful conversation, like we started this at the beginning with, about who we are and what we're trying to do, and then what can we do together? Because then that builds a relationship. Just a start. And now you got to have the stamina to keep it going, because whether that's check-ins, updates, and I'm not talking about performative. Please know it's not that. It's not performative. It's more about what are you trying to do and how are you trying to do it? How can we move that quickly for you so that you can continue doing what you care to do as a nonprofit lead? And so that over time helps build up the trust, the professional patina, I also call it, of like, I know what I'm doing in this space and I know how to do it. And I need your capital to help me continue doing this at scale. Want to meet? Right. And then you have to have the backing to be able to speak that candidly about your work, which comes with clarity, clear understanding, team alignment, all the things that make people successful, which help build that trust towards collective work towards impact.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you said that, because, so often when, in fact, I was just at one of the Giving USA report launches or whatever, proposals yesterday. And they were doing several this week around the country. And I'm very fortunate that one came to our community. And so trust philanthropy, everybody's talking about it, but nobody has quite framed it up the way you just did. That doesn't mean that you just take the check and you're like, see ya. I mean, that you're still engaging to this point and using the metrics and the data to have the ongoing discussion versus that. Yeah. When it's all wrapped up, and that could be 2 years, that could be 5 years, then you report back. I love that you said this, because it really changes the experience. And I got to believe that, when a funder's having a great experience, then all of a sudden more money or more opportunity gets opened up, right?
I would think, right? If it's working, it feels good, looks good, sounds good. Well, I want to learn more. I'm interested in doing it again, right? I think that's important. But I also think that, like, when you think about what are we trying to do, right? I remember listening to one of my clients in the past say, I'm a funder. I should be judged on getting money out the door quickly. Right. And I'm like, oh, I've never heard someone talk about that. The velocity of giving money out as a metric. She's like, that's what we do, give out money. So let's give it out quickly. And then our learning officers tell us where, what priorities, et cetera. But the idea being, that's my job to get this money out. Well, nonprofits' job is to run their social enterprise, and getting the capital to fund it is part of it. They don't exist to just raise money. They are doing it in service of their focus and their work. And so if we can get to this idea of, for us collectively, impact is more gainfully employed African-American men in Southside Chicago. Great. Well, I do this work, you fund this work. How can we work together? Not how can I validate through annual report at the end of the year to tell you that I did something that you wanted me to do, that I need to tell you I did so that I can keep the money coming in. That's not learning, right? And so how do we get off of that? And I think it starts with empowerment for the
amazing. Yeah, this has really been a grand conversation. Thank you so much. Stephen Minix, the Vice President of Community at UpMetrics. Take some time and go to UpMetrics.com and see what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's absolutely fascinating. I know there's so many folks that are out there talking about how they can help you manage your data and really understand this next level of performance. But this is a really unique avenue. And I so applaud your work. And I really appreciate you, Stephen, coming on and talking to us today at the Nonprofit Show.
All love. I appreciate the space, and thanks for letting us be part of it.
Yeah, really a lot of fun. We are here having amazing conversations like we have today with Stephen Minix because of our support. And that comes from Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. As we leave each and every episode, we leave with this mantra, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.